Hi, everybody. It's Doc Talk. We're at the middle of September. Years just flying by, and good things happening around the country. Been to a lot of wonderful meetings recently, conferences taking place. We're heading into the busiest part of the conference season, which is always a fun time of the year. But let me say, for all of you who have been traveling, it's been coming home with respiratory infections has been a story. Whether you're domestic or international, and in particular, the internationals have been coming back with respiratory infections. So, for those of you traveling, putting on that mask may not be a bad idea. And remember this: protecting yourself from others is an N95 mask, protecting others from you, and in some ways, protecting you a little bit is just a simple surgical mask. So if you're traveling and in close contact, make a pretty good recommendation that you consider a mask, particularly if you're susceptible to respiratory infections, which is what I have to do, unfortunately. Uh, then we're in this arena where all the vaccine news is coming up. So this has all frankly been very good news so far. Last year, this time, we were talking about COVID, we were talking about RSV, and we were talking about flu, all three of them. The CDC, other healthcare entities, we got to work on this. So there has been significant work over the last year on prevention of infections, RSV, COVID, influenza, all three. So we talked last time on Doc Talk about the extension of the vaccine programs for RSV. So let's talk a little bit less about them this week. But just a refresher, there are immunizations for babies that are proving very effective, available from pediatric clinics, pediatricians. And I think as more become available, we'll also hear from our public health agencies who will have them available for people to get for those early in their life. So this is from newborn until about 3 years of age. That's the target group for life-threatening infections with RSV. Second group is to get to those babies in a different way for pregnant women who are going to deliver a baby. They can get an immunization at a certain point in their pregnancy that will protect their babies. So mom acts as the producer of the antibodies, passes them through to the babies before they're born, and then when the baby is born, they have protective antibodies that they've have already instilled in themselves from mom. The third group is for the elderly. So let's say above age 60, particularly those at risk for respiratory infections. There is a new standard vaccination for RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, RSV, which infects older people, gives them terrible coughs, and in some cases exacerbates old problems that they have, like COPD, asthma, and other respiratory illnesses. So that's a little refresher on RSV from a couple weeks ago. Flu. Flu in the South Americans, the Southern Hemisphere was largely composed of H3N2, H1N1, our old friend, and a couple of the B viruses. So we have a flu vaccine that has been prepared this year and is just going out for distribution now into the community that really matches what has been seen in the Southern Hemisphere in terms of viruses. So protection from influenza A, influenza B is a vaccine. There's a vaccine for those under age 65, and if you will, a little more potent a more potent vaccine for those over age 65. So it has a little higher level of the vaccinating products that protect us all from influenza. At this point in the year, it looks like a match. Even here in Florida, we're seeing an up creep of the flu A that's going through the community, and have already seen some admissions to the hospital from flu A. The vaccine for this year is just coming available, and for many people, um, October is their usual month for getting the flu vaccine, and that way they carry it through the entire influenza season, which takes us in most parts of North America through until March or April. So September may be a little early for some of you, but certainly before we get to Halloween time, the end of October, you should think about getting your flu vaccine. Okay. All right. The news of the week is about COVID vaccinations. So COVID still hanging around, very honestly, still making people sick. And I'm helping to manage 3 friends and family who have COVID right now. They came back from travel and caught the bug. It was picked up on their home tests, and the home tests that were circulated the last 18 months are still good. If you have tests at home, check the expiration date to make sure that they're still good. But so far, those tests have proven effective and have picked up on the COVID infections. I've also had several friends who've had other forms of respiratory infection now. So, middle of September, picking up respiratory infections a little bit early. So, I want everybody to be thinking about that. And then thinking about COVID right now, it is the new variants. We talked about the names, in particular, ERIS, ERIS, is the EG5 variant. It has been well covered by the new vaccine that has just been approved this week by both the FDA and the CDC. That new vaccine is coming available at the end of this week, but more importantly, next week and beyond, for protection of individuals from COVID. For those of you who've had an infection before or vaccinations before, there is a single shot. So it's a booster matching the current vaccination, matching the current virus that is spreading. And it seems to be a good match. People who have not had vaccination or illness before may need a 2-shot vaccination, and that's in particular for children. So that's something to talk over with your pediatrician. And for people who are newly immunocompromised, so a recent diagnosis that puts their immune system at risk, may need a 3-shot series if they had not had a vaccine before. But for the vast majority of people, this is 1 booster, small dose, update to match new variants, and that is a good thing. I will be one of the first to put my arm out to get that vaccine, although I've had 4 vaccines already and been sick once. I am going to do it because my immune system doesn't have the same level of tenacity with this new variant, and I want to be updated. I'm going to get in one arm my flu vaccine, and in my other arm, I'm going to get the COVID vaccine. So get them done both at the same time. Know that for the first 24 hours, I may not feel real great, but usually at about 24 to 32 hours after the vaccination, you're back feeling well. And then it takes about 2 weeks for your body to be fully protected from those infections. So it takes a little while to build up the antibodies after you've gotten your vaccines. So in planning for travel around Halloween time, I want to be fully immunized. And so my mid-October is going to be getting flu and the new COVID vaccination. What is new this year that we have to talk about is where you're going to get your immunization, because the public health emergency ended, meaning the federal government is no longer covering the shots, meaning no longer will they have the free immunization sites scattered through the communities. Instead, you're going to have to work with local clinics, with retail pharmacies, with public health agencies, with federally qualified health centers, with occupational health that is providing the updated COVID vaccine. So that's new. And in some cases, it may involve exchange of money or an exchange of your insurance card to the entity that's providing the vaccine for you. So with no further public health emergency, we will have to in some way bring the COVID vaccination into how we routinely get our vaccinations, which are part of our primary care, part of our public health system locally, part of the clinic system that we ordinarily have for vaccinations. So that is different this year and may force some of you to think through what you're going to do, and then pay attention to the local media who may be reporting to you when they have the immunizations available at what sites, and in particular for the Rite Aid, Walgreens, CVS pharmacies, when those entities will have the vaccine. They will, in general, have one vaccine that's available because the older vaccines are being phased out. So the old bivalent vaccines that we use for earlier variants are not going to be administered any further. Instead, we'll be administering the one form of vaccine that's available now. It was approved for two manufacturers, Pfizer and Moderna, for the mRNA vaccines. That was the news on Monday. And now it is being signed off by the CDC director. And then they begin to ship that product. So a little busy this year. Again, avoiding the three-phase issues we had with respiratory viruses last year, RSV, flu, and COVID. And we want to do that moving into this year. The COVID infections, just want to make you aware, they are moving through some of our senior facilities and some of our other places where people are together a lot. We call those congregate care facilities. So those are places that will be a priority to get immunizations. Some older people that are close to me, their senior care facility is going to ask all of them to get the immunization because they've already had a run through of that facility. They've had quite a few COVID cases, and a couple of those cases took frail elderly people and put them in the hospital. So we're back at that phase with the seniors. For those of you with older members of your family, they're in a position very clearly of being high up on the priority list for the current COVID. And then as we move through, we think this is still a great thing for the entire population down to 6 months of age that they get COVID vaccinated. So there's where we are heading into the middle of September. For me, great time of the year because the football season's going again every weekend, and a couple of the weekday nights. Football is back. Love this time of the year. Beginning to cool down a little bit. But a little early run on these respiratory infections, and in particular for people who are close to me, I am concerned. I want us all to be protected. I want you to be protected. So it's Doc Talk for mid-September. We're talking about respiratory viruses and talking about taking care of ourselves. So enjoy your time. Here we go into the fall, and we'll talk to you at the beginning of October. Thank you all.